Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Live Healthy Miami Gardens weekly Facebook Live. The Healthy Facebook Live is a weekly wellness series brought to you by the City of Miami Gardens, Live Healthy Miami Gardens Division. And our goal is to bring community information and resources to help you make better choices for yourself and your family. I am Shadi Sobas, and I will be your host today. And our topic will be preparing for back to school questions from a parent's perspective. Our guest is Dr. Nadia Cumberbatch, family medicine physician with Jesse Trice Community Health System. It is so happy to meet you today and to speak with you, Dr. Cumberbatch.
Thank you, Ms. Silvers. It's a pleasure to meet you also.
So, could you go ahead and give us a brief introduction?
Absolutely. So I am Dr. Nadia Cumberbatch. I'm a board certified family medicine physician, which means I have training in taking care of patients from birth to geriatrics, obstetric care, gynecology. And I work at Jesse Trice Community Health Systems, which is a federally qualified health center in the city of Miami. And we provide care to patients whether they have ability to pay or not.
Thank you. And Jesse Trice does amazing work in and around the city of Miami Gardens. So, thank you for being part of an organization like that.
Yeah, they're great.
Um, so, let's just give some information to our Miami Gardens residents about their children and about getting back to school. And so I'm
Okay.
just going to pose some questions that we've received from parents and caretakers and get your expert opinion.
Okay.
Our first question that we received: what child vaccinations are recommended for different age groups?
Different age groups. Okay. That's really a loaded question. I had to make notes on that because pediatric care has a lot of detail to it because there are different things at different ages. So I think let me focus on school age children just because that's the topic for today. So for your 4 to 6 year olds, as long as they've been seeing their pediatrician and they're up to date with their vaccines, they should be finishing most of the complete series of certain types of vaccines. So 4 to 6 year olds should be getting a DTaP, which can consist of diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis. Acellular pertussis causes whooping cough, tetanus causes lockjaw, diphtheria, which I've never seen in my career, can cause airway compromise. And many decades ago, children would succumb to that particular bacteria, but because vaccines have improved, there have only been 2 cases for like the last 2 decades in the United States. Okay, so they'll be finishing that series. And then they get their 4th dose of inactivated polio, which I've also never seen in my career. This is all attributed to vaccines. And then they would be getting their 2nd dose of the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, and then the varicella vaccine that causes chickenpox. Okay, so that's when kids are going into kindergarten. Okay, that's their age appropriate vaccines. And then now we're getting into our 9 to 14 year olds. So this is when we start the HPV vaccine series, right? And this protects against cervical cancer, genital warts. And then they get something called Tdap, which is related to DTaP. It's the same makeup, but it's
Okay.
for over 7 years old. Okay,
Okay.
by dose. And then they get a meningitis vaccine, and they get 2 doses of that because they, at 14 going into 16, they're going to be going to college, and the risks for meningitis could be high for them because they'll be in closed quarters and it can be transmitted respiratorily, right? And so that will be the vaccine series from 4 to 6 and then 9 to 14.
Okay. And you mentioned two that you are series, the meningitis and the HPV, correct?
Yes. So the
Okay.
HPV, if you get it before 11, you will get 2 doses. And if you get it after age 11, then you need 3 doses.
Okay.
Because, as we age, our immune system doesn't ramp up as well as it did when we were a baby and we were like brand new and shiny and not exposed to any germs, right?
Yes.
So that's the series for HPV.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I think sometimes parents think it's one vaccination and the end, but for those, it's repeated vaccinations according to your physician, correct?
Right, exactly.
Okay,
So we call it like so let's just say with HPV, you're going to say the point is 0, right? That's the first vaccine. And then at 6 months later, then you'll get the second vaccine if you did like the 2-dose series.
okay,
Okay.
understood. And from your perspective, how do vaccines work and why is it important for children's health?
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about immunity and then we'll talk
Okay,
about, how vaccines work.
all
So,
right,
your immune system is not one thing. Like parents will come in and they'll be like, oh, my kid's immune system is down or up, right? But it's like not just one aspect of your anatomy and physiology, right? It's a combination of your organ systems and cells and then proteins that your organ systems produce in order to protect you against germs, right? Um, and so there are different types of immunity. So we have active immunity, which means like if you got exposed to, say, the common cold virus, and it's the first time you've ever been exposed, then your own body has the potential to make antibodies to protect you, to kill that virus, right? So we call that a
understood.
natural immunity. And then vaccinated or vaccine mediated immunity means that we are exposing you to a weakened form of the virus, so something that's not going to make you very sick, or a killed form of the germ, whether it's virus or bacteria, in order to alert your immune system of its presence enough so that you can create fighter cells to manage that particular germ if you were ever exposed to it at a higher dose that it could cause problems.
Understood. Okay, so it's about minimizing and protecting
Yes,
even past your natural immunity.
correct.
Okay, and in thinking of the flu vaccine,
Mhm.
when is the best time for a child to get the flu vaccine, and how effective is it in preventing the flu?
Okay, so let's talk about the flu vaccine. So, flu season, October to March, right? So, on the western side of the world, so it's flu season on the eastern side of the world, right? And in places like Africa, it's flu season because it's cold there and it's warm here. Um, so, the flu vaccine normally comes out late September. Um, and flu season sort of peaks like October, November. So getting it before that peak is what I recommend. But that doesn't mean that if you miss that peak or you're like in September when it first comes out, that it shouldn't be administered. Like some protection is better than no protection, right?
Absolutely.
So it's very important and it is very effective. I think what is not understood about the flu is that it's a very smart virus, right? So the reason you're getting flu shot every year is one that we don't know what strain we don't know the strain of flu that the vaccine has to be made for until things happen in the in the eastern part of the world in terms of the flu, right? And the
Yes,
flu can change the way it looks, like it can change it like a coat, right? And so then we need to make sure we're making a vaccine to target like the correct germ. Um, the flu shot is important with children just because young children are just learning proper hand hygiene and whatnot, and they're in school with other kids, and if they don't practice the right hygiene, they touch the desk, they touch their
yes.
nose, they touch their
Each
friend.
other, yes.
Right. So it can be transmitted pretty quickly in that type of environment where, and if they are vaccinated, those fighter cells that they have will squash that virus and it will not be able to multiply to a dose that it can be transmitted to someone else, like their grandparent whose immune system is waning, right? The extremes of age, right? So the immune
Exactly.
system is waning. And so this is why it's important. It's important so that they don't have such a severe infection for themselves, but also that they don't bring it to an environment where they can transmit to someone who's immune compromised.
Understood. And you deal mostly with family medicine and seeing parents and children come into Jesse Trice.
Mhm.
What are some common symptoms of the flu in children, and when should a parent seek medical attention if their child becomes ill?
Yeah. So flu, kids can feel, you can tell they feel icky, like they don't want to get out of bed. They, um,
Lethargic, just easily.
lethargic. They are warm to the touch.
Okay.
Um, you know, Sometimes they'll say they have a sore throat. And so it's important for parents to all have a thermometer at home, right? And then, you're looking for 100.4 as a documented fever. And then, parents at home are pretty intuitive. So they will try to treat with pediatric Tylenol and ibuprofen, which is appropriate. But if that fever is not improving, or their symptoms are getting worse, they're getting more lethargic, sometimes it's hard to wake them up, they don't want to eat, and the fevers are not getting better, and sometimes they develop a cough,
Mhm.
then that would be like a reason to bring them in. But the best time to bring them in is, within 72 hours of those symptoms, because there's medication that may be able to help tame the virus a little so that the symptoms don't get worse.
Understood. That's great guidance. And we're going to pivot because we're seeing increases in emergency room visits for COVID and in
Mhm.
COVID cases. What is
Yes.
the current guidance on COVID-19 vaccinations for children?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So the flu and COVID, they're viruses, and they sort of have very similar guidelines. So we start vaccinating at 6 months of age, and it's a series of 3 vaccines if you get the Pfizer, and it's 2 if you get the Moderna. And then it is recommended that you get the booster, which is for like the bivalent. These viruses, like I had said earlier, are very smart, right? So they can change how they look so that they can avoid the immune system so that they can infect cells because they want to live too, right?
Yes.
So, um, so it's very important, to get your kids vaccinated. And so the series can start at 6 months. So even if they are, say, 3 years old now and they never had a COVID vaccine, well, they can start the series now, right?
Okay.
Um, and the booster is recommended.
Okay. And on top of boosters
Mhm.
and everything else that we can do to protect ourselves, do you have any precautions that parents can take to ensure that their children are safe as they return to school?
Yes, I like encouraging parents to sort of make a game out of hygiene practices,
Yes.
right? Every time it's time to wash your hands, proper hand hygiene. If you make it a song, you make it a game, kids will absorb that habit. And when they get to school, they'll practice the same thing, right?
Yes.
Um, the older kids, you can give them wipes to take to school with them. I think that's really a good idea,
Okay.
right? So, before, and encourage them. And if you, whatever you encourage at the house is going to happen outside of the house, right? So
Absolutely.
if when they come in the house, they immediately wash their hands. They're going to the dinner table, they wash their hands, right? They know they touched something icky or they just touched this desk and they shouldn't touch food in the home. You're making it a part of a practice. Then they
Yes.
will build that habit and they will take that habit to school with them. Older kids, like teenagers, sending them with hand sanitizer, making the school nurse aware if they're not feeling well.
Yes.
Um, those types of things are very important. But I think if in the home you are starting to build the practices and habits of proper hand hygiene, that's the best place to start.
Wonderful. Wonderful recommendations, because what happens at home translates, just as you said.
Exactly.
Um, are there any signs? We skipped over signs and symptoms for COVID-19. We focused on flu, but are there any other signs different for COVID versus flu? And when should a parent look at that?
They're very similar. I mean, I'm going to tell you, viruses in general are very similar because before this COVID-19 is not different in terms of like other coronaviruses, right? There have been viruses that have been around for a long time. And sometimes kids come into the pediatric emergency room and you're like getting a swab, excuse me, looking for flu, looking for respiratory syncytial virus, right? They all sort of overlap in how they present. All right. So in terms of, it's like same thing, lethargy, cough. Some kids can have diarrhea because the coronavirus affects the mucous membranes. And so mucous membranes are in the upper airway, but they're also in the gut, right? So this is why people have like vomiting, diarrhea with COVID. So that's a sign, right? The key thing for parents is if they try to treat at home, like say they gave Pedialyte and Tylenol and things are not getting better, then that is a reason to escalate care, to maybe call your pediatrician and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can I bring my kid in because, this fever's not breaking. This diarrhea is not getting better. Little Tommy at school was sick. No one knows what he had. Or do you think I should go and get tested for COVID? Things like that.
Wonderful questions to ask and to stay on top of things. One question we get a lot: can children receive COVID and flu vaccinations at the same time, or are there any effects of getting them both?
No, they can get them both. If you think about, so I don't work for any manufacturer of vaccines. Let me just put that out there. But a lot of pediatric vaccines there's one vaccine, but there are 4 different things that you're treating for. I don't treat the little ones as much anymore, but Pediatrix, that's something, given to your 4-month-olds, right? That one has tetanus, I think, hepatitis B, diphtheria, I think, and then, right? So it has multiple agents in one vaccine, right? So there's no contraindication in giving these vaccines together. And remember, like I said earlier, kids are like shiny and new when they're younger. So they mount an immune response like way quicker than an adult would, right? So they mount that protective mechanism just because of how they are made up as children. So no, the main side effects, right, for most vaccines, whether you're a child or an adult, is going to be pain at the site, which you can treat it with Tylenol or ibuprofen. And then, just like I had spoken about earlier, right, you can have natural immunity versus vaccination-induced immunity. Mm-hmm. So with excuse me, exposure to a virus naturally, what happens? You feel a little feverish, you feel a little achy, right? Well, it's the same thing that's going to happen with a vaccine, right? Because you're being exposed to a germ. And so your immune system is responding, and that is how it feels when it responds.
Understood. So it's not a recent thing that manufacturers have been combining vaccines in a sense.
No. And if you think about when little ones like 2 months to 12 months, when they go in for their vaccines, they're getting like 3 or 4 at a time. And like one of those vaccines has like 4 different agents inside of it, right?
Absolutely.
So, this is like not a new practice.
Absolutely. And we remember our vaccination schedules and getting multiple shots sometimes on the same day. Understood. And how can a parent then ensure that their child's vaccination schedule aligns with the school's requirements and health requirements from their doctor?
Right. So I think the best thing to do is to be consistent with regular annual visits with your pediatrician. Now, when they're little itty bitties, from birth to 18 months, they have to go more often, right? Just,
Yes.
and your pediatrician will schedule that, you know. But some parents sometimes, after that, like first 2 years of life, then then they come and be seen, and then 2 years later they show up and it's like, where were you and your child? Because even if from the 18-month mark, your next vaccine is going to be at 4 years old,
Yes.
you don't want to come in 4 years later.
4 years later,
Or like, or 2 years later, like
playing
come
catch
every
up.
year.
Yes.
Right? Because it's not only your vaccines that you're seeing your pediatrician for, right? We're looking at developmental milestones to make sure that they are growing properly, okay, in a number of facets. So that has to be evaluated.
Yes.
So, once you've left that toddler stage, then annually you should see your pediatrician, and they will make sure that you catch up with all of your vaccines, and that will automatically line you up with the school system.
Understood. Thank you for that, Dr. Cumberbatch. And is there anything that you would like to impress upon parents regarding their children, regarding vaccinations and going back to school?
Um, I would just say, school happens in 3 weeks, I think, here in the city of Miami.
Yes.
Let's try to get our school physicals done immediately. Like, you know, don't wait till the last minute, because if there's an evaluation and there's something that that pediatrician has um, appreciated with the child that may need further workup or whatnot, then, try to get in as soon as possible. Like, try to avoid waiting for the last minute, longer wait times, because there's so many parents in the waiting room and kids and whatnot. Save yourself that headache. Call your pediatrician
Understood.
today. Call Jesse Trice. Right, our pediatricians are
And
here to help you.
as we wrapped up, that was actually my question to you
Uh-huh,
to tell parents, especially parents here in Miami Gardens, how
uh-huh.
they can interact with Jesse Trice and bring their children in to get the necessary vaccinations.
Okay, so I know Miami Gardens, our center is the Barbara Jordan Center. And I'm sorry I live south, but it's behind the stadium. I think that's 27th,
Yes.
right? It's like right there. Like, you make a right, and the building on the two buildings down is the Barbara Jordan Center for Jesse Trice. Give us a call. We'll try to get you in. Um, I don't have the number at hand. Actually, I'm gonna look it up right while we're here.
Yes.
That way,
And you
because
can easily
I
look up Jesse Trice in
yeah,
your area,
yeah,
and
you could
they
put
welcome you.
Jesse Trice in your area, but for Miami Gardens, the Barbara Jordan Center is going to be closest, right? Um,
Yes.
so, and I don't mind looking it up, just because I'm here, I call people by extensions. So, community health, Miami Gardens. Okay, we'll find that for you guys. Alrighty. So let's see. Call 305 694 6270.
That's right, guys. 305-694-6270, and
70.
that for
Mhm.
everybody in Miami Gardens.
Yes,
I
and
would just
if there's a center that, I mean, you can actually call that number to get to the Miami Gardens. If you don't live in Miami Gardens, they can transfer you to the center that is near you, and you can make an appointment. If you are already established with Jesse Trice and you have My Chart, you downloaded the My Chart, you can actually make your appointment online.
understood. Well, I would like to thank you, Dr. Cumberbatch, so much for meeting with us today and for walking us through vaccinations for children and how you and the staff at Jesse Trice deal with, heading back to school and providing some recommendations for parents. Any final words before we sign out?
I do have final words. We do have a health fair for children, school age children going back to school. And I think it's actually next weekend. And
Okay.
it is at our 54th and 22nd Avenue location, which is our main center, the Fatima Zafar.
Yes, I've been
Um,
down there.
yeah, so if you are in that area, you can call, you can make an appointment. I think they're taking walk-ins. So if you're a last minute parent, you can come to our pediatric health fair.
Okay, so stay tuned, guys. I am going to get the flyers and get that information and share it out on the Live Healthy Miami Gardens page so parents can come out to Jesse Trice next week for that health fair.
Yes, I think it's next
Thank you
Saturday.
so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Cumberbatch. Have a great one.
You too. Bye bye. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Bye bye.